Street Knowledge with Chris Graham.
Welcome to the podcast. It's Chris Graham and Jerry Carter. It's a Monday, and we're heading towards week 5 of the college football season. We'll talk a lot of college football. We'll talk some other sports stuff as well. And Jerry, got to say, hey, how's it going?
Well, Chris, I have to laugh at myself. I'm always talking to people about the weather out here, and I said it's a myth. We don't have that kind of weather. But I have to open up and say we're having one of those days. It's just a drizzle, and it's going to drizzle all day. It's not going to kill my mood, but I have to laugh is that this is a stereotypical day of what people think the weather's like out here. So it's in the 40s. It's drizzling, but I'm happy to be talking to you, and so that we honor our word from last week. We signed off last week talking about let's open with a conversation about the VMI cadets. So can you tell me what happened on Saturday?
Yeah, not good. And I'll say, too, 40s in Washington State here on the first day of fall, 88 here in Virginia. And we're going to be in the 80s all week. It's going to be around 90 this weekend. So fall is still just in name only here as far as Virginia is concerned. VMI with a chance to go 3-1. Outplayed Robert Morris largely in the game, but you look at all the stats, VMI outgained Robert Morris by about 100 yards total offense. 2 turnovers each side, really not really impacting the game in any way. The one stat that was key was red zone. In the red zone, Robert Morris 4 trips, 3 touchdowns, 1 field goal. VMI 4 trips, 2 field goals. Final score 31-21. Robert Morris pulls the upset. VMI, boy, that was so frustrating to watch because you're watching the VMI team go up and down the field, but just not punch it in when they needed to. The Robert Morris defense, give them credit. The Colonials, they bent, but they didn't break, using the old football saying. And so disappointing day. But even in a disappointing day, it's one of those things where, it's weird to say, but in defeat, I'm kind of thinking this way. VMI teams in the past lost games because they were just thoroughly outplayed. This is the kind of game, and we'll talk about the UVA game in a second, but I think there's a compare and contrast between UVA playing ODU and getting outplayed largely but still winning 28-17. Teams like the UVA team, ranked in the top 25 in the national polls at the 1A level, teams like that will win a lot of games. They're not supposed to win. Because of confidence, experience, etc. This VMI team's still learning how to win in a lot of cases, and sometimes you'll see a team like that that's still trying to figure out how to win games. You'll see them lose games that they should otherwise win, and that's what happened on Saturday.
Well, Chris, one of the words that I heard you use in that breakdown was upset, and that in itself is encouraging. When you're saying that VMI was upset, because it tells you that the program is heading in the right direction, and it's not been that often that VMI has went into a game as a favorite in a game, and I'm really hoping they could shake this one off and it doesn't take away from the momentum that the program has going. My other question was, what kind of crowd did they have on Saturday?
It was a normal crowd. They have a consistent crowd, whether they're 0-11. I would say, or whether they have a winning record, which they haven't had in almost 40 years. But they always have a hearty group of people there. And I got to say this. I know a lot of our listeners, some of our listeners are VMI folks. A lot of our listeners are UVA folks. They'll never go to a VMI football game on a Saturday. But, the VMI alums are alums for life. And they don't care, again, if the team's 0-11 getting their heads kicked in every week. They're there. Lexington, downtown Lexington, is adjacent to the VMI campus, the Washington Lee campus, right beside it as well. The Foster Stadium holds, I don't know the official capacity. It's around 2,500, 3,000. Mostly cadets at the games. There are quite a few people from town who come to the games as well, and then the visiting teams will bring some folks along. But one thing about VMI football weekends. There's a neighborhood behind the stadium. Route 11 is the road that takes you from, or there's a business 11 that takes you from main Route 11 to downtown Lexington. It goes right in front of the stadium. So behind the stadium, there's a whole neighborhood of homes, and several neighborhoods of homes, a college town kind of neighborhood of homes. most of those homes are owned by VMI alums, a lot of whom only come into town when there's VMI football games. They buy these homes and they're there. They're basically 6 days a year, 6 weekends a year. They're used by the alums. They come back for football games. They don't. I mean, they care. They want to win the football games, but they're there. Whether or not they win or lose, they're there for the games in the fall. So, what would that be? In economics, that means the demand for VMI football tickets is very inelastic. They're there no matter what. If it's if milk's $1 million, they're buying the milk in this case. So they're there, and it was. Now I will say this: it was louder. The crowd, especially the cadets, really in the second half when VMI was trying to rally, 2 times cut the score to the margin to a 1-score game. The cadets can be 1,700 cadets can be loud if you can imagine that. Put them all together, and they were. It was a good environment for the game on Saturday.
Well, Chris, I will tell people that are listening. I've spent many a day down on the campus at VMI. Mine was more on the basketball side of things, but if you've never been inside of the building of VMI for a basketball game, I think the brief ceremony they do at the end of the game, I would put on a must-see list. If you're out there, again, I come from a long line of military in the family, and it's a situation, always had a ton of respect for VMI. So it's great to get a chance to talk about them. And before we move on from VMI, what do they have next?
Wofford, Southern Conference home opener is on Saturday, and a chance to once again. I mean, still have a chance to do something special as far as this season goes. I'm actually finding. I was looking up some stuff here. The attendance listed at 3,900. The stadium capacity is actually listed at 10,000. I'm not sure. If I can believe what I found there on the internet or not, but attendance 3,900. Yeah, Wofford coming into town. The SoCon. I like to say this, and I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say this. That the SoCon has to be the toughest conference, top to bottom, in FCS college football. It is just so deep, just so up and down the list there. And so when I say Wofford is 1-2, 0-1 in the conference, they lost to Samford by a touchdown. Just got blown out by Gardner-Webb this past Saturday, so in a non-conference game. So, VMI, there might be some blood in the water. I mean, both those teams are going to be looking for a win. If VMI wins, they're 2-0 in the SoCon. The conference that I'm saying is the toughest in all of FCS. So, still, you hear this a lot. If you lose a non-conference game in September, you can still regroup. And in VMI's case, they do have that road win at ETSU. If they can get the win over Wofford, you'll forget the sting of this Robert Morris loss, because then you're thinking, hey, we're 2-0 in the SoCon. What can we do from here? And I think that opportunity is still very much there for this VMI team.
It's going to be interesting going forward for them, and you're in a situation while you were down there for, is it each home game that they played?
This year, I'm only doing 3 of the 6. The last 4 years, I had done the radio for every one of the home games. This year, the Southern Conference is working with a new broadcast provider. They've worked, and they still do work with ESPN, have a long-standing commitment with ESPN, but a company called Nexstar is actually working on some of the production of some of the football games this year. And so for 3 of those football games, they send their own broadcast crew to the game. And as a result, Wade Branner, who's the voice of the Keydats, Wade does everything at VMI. He's the SID, Sports Information Director, in addition to until the game started being broadcast on ESPN3 and now ESPN Plus in some cases, Wade was radio football. He does baseball and everything else. He and I do the baseball in the spring together on ESPN3, ESPN Plus. But he'll move down from the ESPN3 broadcast booth. He'll move a couple of chairs over to the radio booth for those 3 Nexstar games. And so I did last weekend's game. I got this weekend's game. I got a game in November. And those other 3 games I won't be on hand for, which is interesting. And I kind of have an itch every time those games come up. You sure I'm not there? You sure you don't need me there? But I've got a busy weekend at VMI this weekend. We won't talk much about the other, but I do have Friday and Sunday VMI women's soccer has a pair of home games. I had a VMI soccer game yesterday, women's soccer game yesterday. What turned into a 3-0 loss to Liberty for VMI. So I'll be on the post, as they say there at VMI. I will be on the post for all 3 days this coming weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, 2 soccer and 1 football.
Here's a good reason to not make the trip to South Bend right there. Again, the tie to VMI and for any folks listening, here's how much I believe in Chris Graham as far as the broadcaster goes. If you go all the way back to the first time Chris Graham had a chance to do a broadcast/telecast from VMI, I was so excited for him. I came down to Waynesboro, picked him up, and drove him over there. I can't tell you. You might be able to tell me who played in that football game, but I just was so excited for the opportunity that it came up. I wanted to do anything I could to be a small part of it. It's awesome for me to know that that's continued. And it looks like it's going to continue going forward.
Yeah, and I had the fun this weekend of I think I talked about this on Friday when we talked when Jerry and I talked that Scott Ratcliffe joined me in the booth this past weekend. Scott Ratcliffe, Jerry Ratcliffe's son, JerryRatcliffe.com. We've been working with Jerry and Scott the past year and a half, I guess, close to. I helped design his new website and I maintain it for him and I've trained Scott how to update it. And we travel a lot together. We were NCAA tournament buddies all March and into April. So Rick Cruz, who's my normal broadcast partner on VMI radio, football radio broadcast. Rick is a former assistant coach at VMI. He's a VMI alum. He coaches some ACC schools as well in his career. Now retired from coaching, and he gives his time to do these radio broadcasts. Great analyst. Defensive side of the ball. He was a defensive player, defensive coach for a long time. But he had a family commitment this past Saturday, so he was not able to join us. So Scott Ratcliffe, who has a degree in broadcast journalism, never has gotten to use it really. He went into writing. He did his first college football game this past Saturday, and so I kind of passed it forward, paid it forward there, Jerry. You talked about traveling down with me for that first game. Scott got to actually get on the mic, and he got to talk for. Oh, it was a long game. We were there for about 4 hours, college football with all the instant replay and everything else. And there were some heat-related issues, players with cramps and everything else. So yeah, Scott and I got to do the game together. That was a real special moment, being there and helping him through his first Division I college football game.
Well, is it safe to say if he got a chance to do it that he's got the bug now, or was this a one and done?
He would love to have a chance to do some more, and I'm hoping that I've said this on podcasts previously, but like the way this opened up for me many years ago was I did Waynesboro Generals baseball games for 6 years. I did some radio spots promoting my a talk show that I did, sports radio talk show that I did. That led to a phone call. Hey, we need somebody to do a game. Can you do a game for us? We're in a pinch. It's 2 days from now. Can you do this VMI baseball game? I did the one VMI baseball game, and I must have not messed up too badly because they called me back to do the football the next fall and asked me if I could do some football. So oftentimes that's what happens. A person fills in for somebody. It's a Wally Pip Lou Gehrig situation, and you do well. And Scott definitely. We've traded some emails since, and he had a wonderful time. Can't wait to have another chance. If it does come up, he'll definitely jump at that chance, and I'm hoping that will come for him certainly. And if whatever I can do to help make that happen, I will.
It's an awesome experience that you got a chance to do that. Chris, I know that by the time you and I talk on Monday, that you have went through your coverage of the Virginia game on a number of levels. And what I try to do on Monday is give you a chance, when we're talking, to offer up any insight you had about what took place, what you were thinking. But before you start, I have to tell you, at no point Saturday did I think Virginia was going to lose that game. I have to believe you might have been feeling different. So tell us what you're thinking about ODU UVA.
Yeah, Virginia is very fortunate to have won that game. They were outplayed. and the only reason Virginia won that game, to break this down, Bryce Perkins made a great play on a fourth down play inside the 10-yard line. The play call was pass. He was flushed out of the pocket and did a Bryce Perkins thing and just ran around for a while and eventually scored a touchdown. But if that fourth down play doesn't go the right way, it's still 17-0 at halftime. Then the quarterback for ODU, Stone Smart, who otherwise had a solid game, 16 for 26, 206 yards, a touchdown pass. In the third quarter, he's facing the heavy rush. He rushes a throw, trying to throw it away, doesn't get enough opportunity to really skid that ball like he wanted to. He wanted to throw it on the ground. The intended receiver was a running back coming out of the backfield. Left a little bit too much air under it. Zane Zandier happened to be in the area, picked it off, ran in for a touchdown. It's 17-14 in the fourth quarter without two really, I don't want to use the word lucky. That's a little strong, but plays that could have easily gone against Virginia. It's still 17-0 in the fourth quarter. Virginia's offense did nothing to that stage. A field goal's blocked. Bobby Wilder goes for 4th and 1 at the 29, doesn't get it. Virginia short field, touchdown. So now all of a sudden you've got Bryce Perkins creating something out of nothing. You've got Zane Zandier creating something out of nothing. You've got Bobby Wilder handing Virginia a short field. It's 21-17 Virginia. The last touchdown was a 3-play, 58-yard drive. It felt like a momentum touchdown. The momentum of the game had certainly changed by that stage with everything else that had happened. But no, Virginia didn't deserve to win that game. They won the game. Credit to the defense after giving up 211 yards total offense on the first 3 ODU drives, after which ODU led 17-0. The defense gave up just 59 yards on the last 10 possessions for ODU. So the defense clamped down, but the offense never got on track. 244 yards total offense. And so Virginia very fortunate to win that game. I understand, Jerry, your perspective, and we were texting during the game, that Virginia is the better team. They will eventually find a way to win. But they were very fortunate to escape Scott Stadium with a win that night.
Well, it's interesting because let's go back just for a second, because one of the things that we were texting about, and one of the things I love about Coach Scott is his ability to gamble on his team. But let's go back to the 4th and 1, and to set up the 4th and 1 on his own 29. His 4-year starter on the offensive line just limped off the field. I couldn't for the life of me imagine what he was trying to do there. And let's go a few steps before that. And Bronco, or the special teams coach, was able to get UVA a 3 first down through extended drive by getting the D line to jump offside. But Chris, what were you thinking when A, Wilder went for that play, and then B, after it did not work?
I will tell you honestly, and I have no one to verify this, unfortunately for me, but I will tell you that I was certain that Wilder was going to go for that 4th down. ODU had gone for 2 4th downs in the first half. One of them led to that 47-yard touchdown pass that made it 17-0. Or was that the one that made it 10-0? It was a 47-yard touchdown pass. It was a 4th down conversion. So he's 2 for 2. You knew that if you're a 4-touchdown underdog coming into a game against a foe like Virginia, that you've got to be a little aggressive, So I had a feeling he was going to go for it. I also had a feeling he wasn't going to get it. Not just because the offensive lineman had to leave the game, number 74. I don't have his name in front of me, but he had to leave the game with the injury on the 3rd down run, the 3rd and 1 run that was unsuccessful. But because the Virginia defense had been so stout after those first 3 drives, and knowing that was going to happen, there was a little bit of a lull because the player had to be sort of slowly walked off the field. It gave us a little bit more time to think that through. I thought it would give him more time to think it through. And I'll say this, like last week, I wrote a column defending Willie Taggart and his offensive coordinator Kendall Briles for their play call, the final play of the game, after the first down inside the 5-yard line, and 4 seconds are left for Florida State, down a touchdown. I wrote a lengthy column defending that play call, explaining exactly why that was the right call. It just wasn't executed properly. I haven't written about this yet, and we'll see. I just saw on my email Bobby Wilder's transcript from his press conference today with ODU beat writers just came in, so I want to kind of break that down a little bit. Even though that game's already over, I do want to re-examine that play one more time. But I'll tell you, there's nothing to defend there. He's 4th and 1 at the 29. His defense is doing a great job. Virginia eventually gets 87 more yards of total offense in its last 2 possessions. They had 244 for the game. My quick math tells me they were at 157 total offense with about 4 or 5 minutes gone in the fourth quarter. If you punt that ball, even if it's a bad punt, if it's a 30-yard shank, you're still putting Virginia on the minus side of the field, probably 40, 45-yard line. They haven't moved the ball that well all game long. They still need a field goal at this stage to tie the game. You just blocked a field goal. So, I mean, there's nothing about this. And if you get the first down to 30-yard line, what does that do for you? I mean, there's a reason coaches don't go for 4th and 1, that far back in their own territory, because the risk-reward. The risk is you give the ball to the other team with a chance to win the game. And the reward is, wow, it's first down to 30-yard line. I do remember maybe my verification, Jerry, on this is I said this out loud. My wife Crystal's with me while we're watching the game, and I say to her, there was a lull there for us to kind of be able to compress a little bit of what was going on. I said out loud that Mickey Matthews did this once. Mickey Matthews, now former JMU coach, in a playoff game, I believe it was App State. He went for a 4th and 1 at his own 29, didn't get it. It led to the game-winning score for App State in a playoff game. I said that out loud, and I said, there's a reason you don't go for these. Even if you get it, it doesn't give you much. If you don't get it, it gives the game to the other team. He decided for some reason, with about 9 or 10 minutes to go in that game, I'm winning 17-14. I shouldn't be winning 17-14. I'm going to make this the play of the game. There's no sense in that. His team had done so much to win that game, and the coach lost the game for them.
Because I'm going to take it a step further. I absolutely agree with you, and I want to add to the fact that they talk about, when the coach rolls the dice, the coach is sticking up for his kids. He believes in his kids. He's doing it for his kids. Chris, I think that was the direct opposite of that.
Yeah.
I think he's sitting there saying, I don't have any faith in my defense. I don't think we can hold this lead. I like Bobby Wilder. I love the fact that he built the program, from the ground. I just felt like that was the absolute wrong thing to do in a point where you're winning the game when you do it. And when that happened, that's when I'm sitting there going, okay, this is over now. Because I couldn't explain it. I couldn't justify it. I'm sitting here going, how can you, when your defense has played so well, make a call that just seemed like it was I was at a loss for words then. I guess I'm still at a loss for words now, but I felt like he did his defense an injustice by trying to go for that there.
His defense and his offense, I mean, you think about it, it cascaded quickly. Virginia scored on its second snap on that particular series after that turnover on downs. Then Virginia's defense holds 3 and out, forces a punt, and there was a pass interference call. So effectively, it was a 4-play drive, but in the scorebook, a 3-play drive. But even if you throw the pass interference call in there with it, 6 plays later from the 4th and 1 being snuffed out, 6 plays later, Virginia's up 2 scores in a game that I really believe if he punts that ball, we're talking about Virginia having lost to ODU 17-14. I just felt like that the stop energized Virginia. It also caught his defense unaware. The first play after that was a 22-yard pass, and then the 7-yard run by Wayne Talapapa. It sucked the air out of that sideline, and it was the mirror image of the first half when ODU got the first drive after the kickoff return got called back. They drive the field, kick the short field goal. Virginia goes 3 and out. ODU takes the ball back down the field, scores. Virginia gets 1 first down, punts, another ODU score. This was the exact opposite of that. This was, we should have just kicked the ball away. We didn't. Now Virginia scored. Now we're 3 and out. They score again. Now we're going to have to. Now we're down 11 with 1 possession left. The game's over. The team had played too well. The game plan had been so effective, and then 1 riverboat gambler decision, and they lose the game. I feel bad for ODU. I feel bad for Wilder. I feel bad for his kids that getting caught up in the moment took away that opportunity for them to get what they earned. They earned a win. They just didn't get it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And it was there was no doubt in my mind that once they stopped them, that any doubt that was left for me. And again, it's easier for me. I'm 3,000 miles away. I'm watching it on a television. But after that play, I got the two TVs side by side. My focus was on Georgia, Notre Dame, for next week's game, because I just didn't think ODU could shake off that. The defense is disappointed because he didn't believe in him. The offense is disappointed because they couldn't execute the play to get the 1 yard. Final thoughts to wrap up. Lesson learned. How do you categorize this one? As far as, before we put it in the books, what's your final thought on the Old Dominion win?
I texted somebody to this effect. This win felt like the win for the men's basketball team over Gardner-Webb in the NCAA tournament. You're supposed to beat a team because everybody says you're supposed to beat them by a lot of points. You're supposed to have an easy time. And you face adversity. I mean, hell, I guess that's a really apt one. Maybe I should write a column on going into this topic, expand on that one text I sent to a friend. But because Virginia was down 14 against Gardner-Webb and faced a tremendous amount of adversity to have to come back and win that game the way they did. But then in the end, it was a pretty comfortable win in the last few minutes of that game, and so was this. Sometimes you face this kind of adversity, you'd rather face it against ODU than you would against Notre Dame. So if you have to get out, and Bronco said that today in his press conference, his Monday presser. He talked about how, hey, now we have that experience. We faced a big deficit. We had to fight our way back, and so that's a good experience for a team to build on. I think about in a basketball season, it's easier to say this, but last year during UVA basketball's championship run, I had certain games played out, and I said, this is the kind of game you need to have as an experience factor for when you play in March. The win over Wisconsin, for example, last year for Virginia, it was a low-scoring, slug-out kind of game. That game in March was the Oregon game, the Sweet 16 game. The Maryland game was an up and down the court, we had to outscore them kind of game. That was Purdue and also Texas Tech, honestly. You have to be able to win different kinds of games if you want to be a champion. And Virginia has aspirations to be an ACC champion this year, maybe even play their way into the playoff. You're not going to beat everybody automatically. Virginia's not Clemson. Virginia's not going to go out there and just intimidate the heck out of everybody and have a 2-touchdown lead before they even take the field because of that intimidation factor. They have to go out and grit out wins. And so now you've got, as part of your experience, you've got a win in a tough place. They beat Pitt 30-14. Pitt just beat Central Florida in the same stadium. So now, and we're 4 weeks into a season now. Central Florida came in with a lot of aspirations there. That same Pitt team that beat Central Florida wasn't even in a game with Virginia. You've beat a Florida State team with a lot of talent that's still trying to figure it out, but you beat them. And now you've got a comeback win, not against a Power 5 team, but you've got a comeback win. So you've got a few weapons in your arsenal now, and this is a weapon in your arsenal. Now you get down and you're down 10-0, 17-0, whatever the case may be. You can look at yourselves. All those kids can look at each other on the sidelines and say, "We've come back from this. We've faced this before. We can do this." And so now that you've won the game, it wasn't enjoyable during the game. It was excruciating to watch. But now that you've done it, now there's something positive that you can carry with you the rest of the season.
I absolutely agree, and I believe that this win is going to be worth much more down the road than, say, the William and Mary win.
Yeah.
It was a good test. So now, peeking ahead just a little bit going forward, I know you've already started your conversations about this. Taking the Cavs are going to go up to the Dome. Touchdown Jesus the whole bit. Notre Dame is coming off of a loss, but Chris, I will say this from having gotten to watch it, they played Georgia at Georgia a whole lot better than I thought they would. I did not see a scenario where they would still be in that game at the end. I just thought that Georgia had too much offensive firepower. So I came away from that game thinking, Notre Dame's defense is a little bit better than I've been giving them credit for. So you've got this week. You want to enjoy the week. When we talked in the preseason, you painted a picture that had the Who's going to South Bend 4-0 and possibly ranked. You have that now. So my first question, it'll be a little bit of a different one. Is there any such thing as a moral victory this upcoming week, or is this, we have to win this thing for it to be a victory?
You got to win. I mean, after it's over with, we can talk about moral victories then, depending on how the game plays out. But you got to win this game. This is a Virginia team now, and there are only a few of us who are still who are willing to talk about this out loud right now. But the stakes are what they are. If Virginia goes now, especially now that Notre Dame did play well in that loss to Georgia, if Notre Dame had gotten the doors blown off like a lot of folks expected in that game between the hedges. The luster of Virginia playing well against Notre Dame or even beating Notre Dame would not quite be as much. But now that we know that this is a legit Notre Dame team. I've been saying all preseason and the first part of the season long that, in my opinion, there are three great college football teams, and then there's everybody else. And Georgia is the third of those three, in my view, great college football teams. Notre Dame went to their place and had the ball in the fourth quarter in the last couple of minutes with a chance to win the game. So Notre Dame is right in that same vicinity all of a sudden now. And so if you're Virginia, you're coming up. At this stage, no one's expecting Virginia, after a narrow win over ODU, to necessarily go up there and play competitively. But this is also still the same Virginia team that beat Florida State, that beat Pitt, a team that just beat Central Florida. And also, you throw all that out the door. You're prepping now. It's Monday. Both teams are prepping for them, for the other side. Your coaching staffs started studying film sometime around January 10th of last year, and including looking at each other in this particular week. You've had people assigned to study film all 4 weeks leading up to this game. This is a big game. It's a big game for Notre Dame too, because they lost to Georgia. They can't afford another loss. They can lose to Georgia and run the table and still have a chance to play in the playoff. They can't get in the playoff with 2 losses. So, and it's also, this is a game now. When this game was scheduled a couple of years ago, it was a 6-7 team that got beat 49-7 by Navy in the bowl game. And so beating Virginia after playing Georgia it was supposed to be a come-down game for Notre Dame. Now, it's number 18 Virginia, 4-0, 2-0 in the ACC Virginia, wins over Pitt and Florida State Virginia, and so it's a chance for Notre Dame to get a marquee win in a sort of a come-down game too. You're coming down from the high of playing Georgia. Now you got to play another ranked team. That's not the way this was scheduled. That's not what Brian Kelly wanted. He wanted a nicer game, a nicer scheduling feat here than what he's got. So they've got to go through what Virginia went through this past week. Virginia had the high of beating Florida State, the emotional high of a close game and a close win to go 2-0 in the ACC. You saw they were flat for a while Saturday night. Bronco Mendenhall said after the game, before the game he said, "I don't think we're going to be flat." After the game he said, "Yeah, he didn't say these exact words, but yeah, we were a little flat." And so now Notre Dame's got a similar issue. They're coming back home after Georgia. They better be ready for Virginia. And Virginia can bring it defensively. I think Virginia, and I didn't say this when we were wrapping up the ODU talk, but Jerry, I think that Virginia may have game planned a little conservatively for ODU, maybe wanting to save some wrinkles, save some looks for Notre Dame not to have as much to review in their film study. And we escaped that game with ODU as a result. It was a very vanilla game plan. A lot of just basic kind of stuff. Didn't use Joe Reed much. Didn't really do much with Bryce Perkins, aside from a few power sweep kind of plays. Very, very basic game plan, but it's not going to be as basic with Notre Dame. So both sides know. If Virginia wins this game, the ACC schedule at this stage, the rest of the way, very favorable, very, very favorable for Virginia. It's not inconceivable, Jerry, that if they beat Notre Dame, that Virginia could be 12-0 playing Clemson in the ACC championship. It's not inconceivable. But so no, there's no moral victories here. We're not talking about we want to have a 31-27 loss on a final play and say, well, we played Notre Dame tough. We want to win that game. And I remember talking with both Bryces at the ACC kickoff back in July in Charlotte, and a question of this nature came up. It was a general question. We weren't talking specifically Notre Dame because it was still July. You're not thinking about a game in September specifically. But Bryce Perkins had a great answer. He said, you don't go out there saying you hope you can win games. We expect to go out and win every game. They expect to go to Notre Dame and win this game. And if you have that attitude, that's part of the battle. That's an important part of the battle. And I think this team is confident. And, Notre Dame is coming off of a very emotional game themselves. I think that the opportunity is there for Virginia to pull the upset and get the eyes of the nation upon them.
It's going to be interesting, Chris, as they go forward with it, because you're in a situation to where you're correct about Notre Dame. If they go 11-1 and their one loss was in Athens by a touchdown, I think they're in the playoff.
Yeah.
In that same situation where Virginia is concerned, you've got two separate goals. The one thing that to me is a saving grace is if you can't find a win in South Bend, it doesn't derail the ACC Express. As far as having a chance to run the table and go to Charlotte. So I don't want to use the term house money in this situation, but I have to like Virginia's ability to go in here and play a carefree football game. I don't think anybody, whether you're talking about Vegas or whether you're talking about the game day people, I don't think anybody is in a situation to where someone's looking at this matchup going, Virginia's going to go into South Bend and beat Notre Dame. It's a situation where I think it could happen. I hope that it happens. And I just want to make sure, like I said, that we're on the same page, that if they win the game, if the Who's win the game, that's awesome. But not going up there with the mindset of, but hey, if we can't win, let's just play good. That's a keep it close. And that goes back to the Bobby Wilder call. I'm sitting there going, I wish he'd have just believed a little bit more where his players were concerned. But with that said, talking about Virginia and Notre Dame, and for me, it's going to be as big of a game as there is this week. And this is going to, I always look to see where it is that game day is going. I think where game day is going is relevant. Now, we're in a situation to where that they're going to Ohio State at Nebraska. And I'm trying to understand why that is. And I know that Scott Frost left Central Florida, and Scott Frost is trying to put Nebraska back on the map. They were ranked in the preseason. Chris, in my mind, this is kind of like Nebraska football is kind of like UCLA basketball. Oh, it's better for the game. It's better for the game if Nebraska's relevant. I didn't think that they warranted being ranked. They lost a couple of games against unranked teams. They lost to their border rival Colorado. They got knocked off again this week. Can you, in your mind, is Nebraska being relevant important to college football?
I am not one who. I know the point you're making. But I'm not one who thinks that just because Nebraska was good 20 years ago or UCLA was good 40 years ago in basketball, that they need to be good now and we need to root for them to be good now. Whoever's good now deserves to be good. Virginia basketball, for example, we're not a blue blood. I don't know if I even like the idea that we could become a blue blood in basketball, but if you commit resources, hire coaching staff, that coaching staff recruits players, those players work hard and win games, that's who deserves to be good. I know your point. I remember when North Carolina was briefly down in basketball at the end of the Matt Doherty era, and there was a year that when they were down, I think they lost 20 games and Virginia swept them. It wasn't fun sweeping Carolina that year. Everybody beat Carolina that year. I mean, you want to beat good Carolina. If you're an NFL fan, you want the Cowboys good, even if you don't like the Cowboys, because you want your team to beat the Cowboys. You want to mean something. You don't want to beat the Quincy Carter Cowboys team. They went 6-10. You don't. Who cares? Everybody beat them. You want the Yankees to be good because, again, if you're not a Yankees fan, you want the Yankees to be good, and then you want them to lose in the World Series because that's fun. But from this standpoint, the Ohio State Nebraska decision. I was a little surprised at first. I mean, I wasn't surprised for one reason, and then as you're talking about it, Jerry, it made me think. But this Notre Dame game is an NBC game. Now, it's not a rule that game day, being an ESPN property, doesn't go to a venue where they're not broadcasting the game. They'll go to a Big Ten venue like they're doing this weekend. Big Ten is actually a FS1 property, Fox Sports property. So they're going to another competing network game. But I would think with every other commercial on ESPN, whether you're watching ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN News, ESPNU, every other commercial is a commercial for the ACC network. This is Notre Dame, Virginia. It's a top 25 game, 10 versus 18. There are 2 top 25 games this weekend. Ohio State, Nebraska ain't one of those 2. I'm offended just from that standpoint, that they're not using this game to try to push ACC network again, because Notre Dame's not an ACC football team. They're ACC everything else. ACC has a team in this game that has a chance to play their way into a championship discussion. And so why is that? Why are they not there? It makes no sense to me. This is the game of the weekend. This is the biggest UVA Notre Dame is the biggest college football game of this weekend. It absolutely makes no sense that game day is not there.
I agree, and I'm just dumbfounded by it. And if there was another game that was more appealing, or equally appealing, or even partially appealing, Chris, I would be okay with it. Yeah. I don't think Ohio State, Nebraska. I'll apologize if Nebraska holds them under 50, but I just think this was a bad choice. And the other thing we have to remember, I remember that same day that I rode over to VMI with you, the announcement was made about where they're going the following week. We have to remember, this isn't something that these people are guessing at 6 weeks ahead. Yeah. They sit and they make a decision saying, okay, where do we need to be this week? I just was dumbfounded that they would have chose to go the same way when Nebraska was ranked. Yeah. Nebraska was again, I like Scott Frost. I'll pull for Scott Frost. He inherited a mess, and they were a bad football team. And I thought the same thing was done for Texas when Harmon went to Texas. Okay, now Texas is actually playing pretty solid football, but I don't think Texas is a national power by any means. No. But you're in a situation where I saw Nebraska in the preseason poll. In my head, I'm going based on what? And the two losses that really surprised me this week, outside of the ACC, one was Nebraska, and the other one was that San Jose State beat Arkansas. Yeah. So you're sitting there with Nebraska, and I'm saying, okay, this is bothering me. I got to ask Chris if it's bothering him. Well, I just felt like it was a natural thing to go to Notre Dame this week. Well, and
you mentioned this earlier, Jerry. We do 2 podcasts a week, and I've been talking all summer about UVA football, and you said it earlier. I've been saying for months that UVA was going to be 4-0 going to play Notre Dame in a top 25 matchup. Now, you just said it too, that the ESPN folks, it's not a surprise. The schedule's out there. If I knew this was going to happen, how could they not know? And it's just also, I wanted to get this out. I wanted to say this about the thing about going up there, house money, moral victories. UVA is going to win this game. UVA is going to beat Notre Dame. But I've been saying this though since July. This UVA team, and it's even more so now. You're catching them after the Georgia game. Notre Dame played well but lost. Backs against the wall now. I thought Notre Dame actually earlier in the preseason. I was thinking Notre Dame would actually win that game. I don't know why, and they would come in maybe overconfident. But Notre Dame's backs against the wall. So there's that aspect to it. But I just think from a simple match up the offense, match up the defense, match up special teams on both sides, I like Virginia in this game. They're not going to go up there. They're not going to go up there and play like Bobby Wilder did this weekend. You're not going to see Bronco Mendenhall go for 4th and 1 on his side of the field. You're not going to see a bunch of trick plays. They're not going to throw a pass to Bryce Perkins. They're going to go out there. They're going to smash mouth them. They're going to play defense. They're going to stop them. They're going to win this game. So that's why I say no moral victories, because if Virginia doesn't win this game, I think they've missed an opportunity. They're a better football team than Notre Dame.
It's going to be interesting, and it's going to be a fun watch. And I agree with you. They're not going to go up there saying, "Oh, let's just try to stay close." I distinctly remember the first time that Duke went up there, and I went up to that game not because I thought Duke was going to beat Notre Dame. I just had a chance to hang out with my dear friend Rob Sisk, and who works there in South Bend, and we're sitting there and visiting. Halfway through the game, we're just talking back and forth, and I looked down and a football game broke out. And Duke ended up winning that game. Now, it was kind of funny, or odd, in that was the year that Notre Dame went 4-8. Kelly, for all the success Kelly's had, it's very similar to Harbaugh. He doesn't win a lot of big games. And Harbaugh proved that again this week by losing to Wisconsin. I think it was by 3 touchdowns. So I think Virginia has a chance going up there. And then if they come back and they're 5-0, then the sky's the limit.
Well, and I'll say this too, and this popped into my head as we're talking. A reason I like this Virginia team is because the same reason I like the Virginia basketball team on the road. Defense travels. It's baseball. If you take a pitcher, your pitching defines the game. Defense defines the game. And if you're a team that like an Oklahoma type team that outscores opponents, and that's how you win games. That's why Oklahoma teams I don't think do so well in playoff situations. They're so used to winning track meets that when they play a Clemson or Alabama in a playoff situation, they're not used to playing someone that can slow them down that way. They're out of their element, and they can't win those games. Virginia can win gritty, ugly games just like the basketball team can because their defense can control you. You're not going to run away from them. And even if you do, like the ODU game the other night, 17-0, ODU didn't score in its last 10 possessions. So even if you do have a little flurry, like the Virginia basketball team, you might make a few three-pointers, but I'm thinking about that Duke game in Charlottesville. Duke made 6 of its first 7 three-pointers. It was still a 4-point game at halftime. It was still a competitive game in the last few minutes with Duke shooting the lights out. Defense travels, and in this situation, the defense is going to help keep this a game. And Notre Dame, their backs are against the wall. They lose this game, and before October 1st, they're out of the playoff race. They're playing with their butts tight. Virginia's up there playing with, hey, we're going to play ourselves into the playoff. Notre Dame's got a chance to win this game. Virginia's going to win this game.
It gives me a chance, and I've been waiting till we got past the bye week to say this. But, Chris, the Duke-Virginia Tech game this year, for me, is an absolute mirror to Virginia-Florida State. When Virginia was going to play Florida State, I asked you the question, have you ever been in a situation to where you went into this game thinking we're supposed to win? They had beaten them a couple of times, but never as a favorite. For me, Chris, this week is the biggest football game Duke's had in quite some time. Because there's not a doubt in my mind that I've been in the building twice when Duke upset Virginia Tech. But this week, when they go into Blacksburg, they have a chance to do something special with this season, and all they have to do is take care of business and win a game against a team that they're better than. So I'm sitting here in my mind. Now, sadly, if you lose this game, you're 2-2, and you're 0-1 in the league. So it's kind of tough, but if you win the game, you're 3-1, and all of a sudden you're going and saying, hey, who's out there that we have to play that is a major threat? You would still be looking at Virginia and Notre Dame, and to a point Syracuse, but I don't know that and what Syracuse is going to be able to do here. So I'm sitting here now asking myself the same question. I'm expecting Duke to win this football game Friday night, and I'm expecting them to win it by a couple of touchdowns. That doesn't mean it's going to happen, but it's definitely the first time that it's been time for the Blue Devils to play the Hokies. So I'm going into here thinking this is going to be a good win for us.
Yeah, I would agree. I think both teams, it's a must-win game in that sense. I mean, every game's a must-win game when you play it, but I mean, in the sense of neither team can afford to have a setback at this stage. Virginia Tech maybe more so, but I think for Duke, you're right. It can really set the tone for the rest of the season in one way or the other. And there weren't great expectations out of this Duke team for good reason. Daniel Jones is starring in the NFL now. We'll talk about that later, I'm sure, but. So there were no expectations for Duke. There still were some for Virginia Tech, not as much as in previous years, but they still got a lot of votes in the preseason ACC kickoff voting for the Coastal Division. They ended up being third, but they got some first place votes. They had a lot of votes, and so and now to be 2-1 with narrow wins over ODU and Furman, they can't lay an egg. They lose this one, and the wheels may come off the Winnebago here, and it could be ugly. For Virginia Tech, for Duke, I mean, you're talking about if you're 2-2, 0-1 in the ACC, you're a team that didn't come in with great expectations this year. So if you win 6 or 7 or 8, that's great. If Virginia Tech though, if they're 2-2 after this weekend, Virginia Tech. It's been a while, but they still think of themselves as a perennial double-digit per season win kind of program. And if you're 2-2 and you have this loss here in ACC play to head into October with, so the pressure's on. I think it's much more on Virginia Tech in a sense, and I like it. My standpoint when I look at games. The team with less pressure, I think, is the one that has the advantage going in. I think Duke has less pressure in this one.
It's going to be interesting. I know I've been looking forward to this matchup for a couple of weeks. And it's a situation where for Duke, as far as expectations go, it comes down to the fact that because they're not getting 4- and 5-star players, nobody knows who these kids are. But there's as much talent at the wideout position and the running back position and the tight end position that Cutcliffe's ever had. Even Cutcliffe was saying, hey, I think the next couple of years, this group is really going to do something special. And again, they've only done it against Middle Tennessee. But Middle Tennessee is a threat to win their conference. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one, but I want to ask you about a couple of other ones. I read a neat article this week asking, is Wake Forest the best football team in the state of North Carolina? And they're including everybody. So, twofold question here. Wake Forest at Boston College. Give me your thoughts.
I participate in JerryRatcliffe.com's weekly picks, and I picked Boston College in this one. I don't usually put too much thought. I kind of just quickly highlight whoever I'm thinking at that very second, and I'll kind of move on. But Boston College is at home, and I still have questions about Wake Forest in terms of they've won the games they've been put in front of, but they haven't really played a high level of opposition. Boston College kind of has, if you count Virginia Tech. I don't know where Virginia Tech stands. We're 4 weeks into the season. I still don't know a lot about a lot of folks. They did lose to Kansas. A nice rebound win, even against the Power 5, if you count Rutgers as a Power 5. I guess you have to technically. I don't know. I think Boston College has played tougher opponents. I think they're about equal in talent. I actually think Boston College probably has more talent. We'll know at the end of the season whether the Kansas loss was an aberration or whether it was a sign of things to come. I'm still willing to give Boston College benefit of the doubt, call it an aberration, and I think they got the advantage. I think they have the advantage in this one. But I will change my tune if Wake Forest goes up and wins this game. Credit to them, and then I'll be a Wake Forest believer. But I still need to be proven about that Wake Forest is legit.
I'm on the same page with you. I think if they win this one, they win their next two. But having to do it on the road, now they went through and they opened up on that rare 3 straight Friday night scenarios, and they followed it up with Elon. Because each week, the ACC games, the non-conference games, I have a number in my head as to what their league's record was going to be. This week, I was spot on. There was one flip-flop, if you will. I did not see Pitt beat Central Florida, and I certainly did not see UNC giving it back to Appalachian State. Which one of those two games surprised you more in reference to the conference?
Well, yeah, that's a close one. That's a close race. Which one surprised me more? I guess I'll go with the Pitt game surprising me more because I saw them with my own eyes, and again, it's still early in the season, and we don't know how the relative strengths of everybody quite yet. We get more information every week. But I saw them with my own eyes. They played a good second quarter against Virginia, but other than the second quarter, they were dominated in that game. And so, and they were the home team. And, I looked at them and said, well, my rationale for why I thought Virginia would win that game the way they did was, they're a team with 4 new offensive linemen. They lost 2,000-yard running backs. They're changing offensive coordinators. They played Penn State well last week. The famous don't go for 4th and 1, kick a field goal, miss the field goal, a situation in the fourth quarter. But that obscured the fact that they played Penn State really tough in that game, and could have very well left with a win. And so so I knew that I thought they'd give Central Florida a game, but to lead 21-0, then to have Central Florida storm back the way they did, and then rally yourself from that deficit and win in the fourth quarter with that great trick play on that 4th down call. Wow, that was a gutsy call for a guy who last week didn't have guts against Penn State. So that one surprised me. I mean, App State, there's a reason Scott Satterfield is the coach at Louisville now. He did well at App State. He didn't leave the cupboard bare, obviously, either. We talked last week, Jerry, about you proposed who the number 3 and 4 teams in the ACC were, and you put North Carolina there. I don't know exactly what I said, but my thinking was, and even more so now, I still need to be sold on North Carolina. We know they beat South Carolina. We know they had the second one was Miami. But I still felt like they had some work to do to prove. And a young team will go out and win a game it's not supposed to, and then lose a game that it's not supposed to, and that's what happened here. But and App State, of course, for them, in that state of North Carolina, they have that game circled on their calendar from the time it's scheduled. So, not surprised they were up. They got up on Carolina. Carolina tried to rally late, trying to make it a game, not able to do so. You got to, there was a lot of similarities from what I've read about that game and looking at the box score, kind of breaking things down, the play-by-play. A lot of similarities in that game to the UVA-ODU game. UVA's got more talent than North Carolina does. They could dig themselves out of a hole. This Carolina team not quite there yet.
Well, it's kind of interesting because the numbers we were referring to last week came out of USA Today's rankings. I'm not bashful from it. I think the third best team in the ACC is Duke. I'm never going to hide from that. I don't think they're on the same level with Virginia or Clemson. But it's that same thing about the old slogan about why not us. It's the same way when you started looking at the Virginia season. You're going, well, wait a minute now. This team's bad. This team's bad. This team's bad. This team's bad. We might not be the best team we could be. I don't think Virginia's going to have to replace Bryce Perkins, but I don't think Virginia's done getting better. I think the pendulum is going up here. I think they're going to continue to get better. But I'm sitting here in my mind, when you talk about the Pitt game, how much, Chris, the Pitt game, it went 21-zip, then it went 31-zip in the other direction, and then it went 14-3.
Yeah.
And pretty much at the exact same time, the exact same thing is happening between Louisville and Florida State.
Yeah.
So now it leads me to the next game to talk about. I'm going to call this one the game. You've got another ACC matchup this week. It's got NC State and Florida State. And I think the loser here is going, we might be in trouble. What are you thinking about the Wolfpack and the Seminoles?
Yeah, I think NC State has less pressure from that standpoint, game pressure, than Florida State does. NC State lost a lot from last year's team. The starting quarterback who'd been there for, literally a 6-year guy. He had a couple of medical redshirt years, obviously, to get to 6 years. But, you lose a guy that's been around your program that long. You had some losses on defense. It was more they were, I think, preseason third in the Atlantic Division maybe, but that was more a factor of how down the rest of the division was than it was a factor of, hey, we think NC State is going to be great this year. Whereas Florida State, yeah, the expectations not necessarily great, but they've got. I looked this up after when I was analyzing the UVA Florida State game a couple weeks ago. The last 5 recruiting classes, 57 4- and 5-star players. I don't know that all are still in the program because 5 years back, you're going to have some redshirt seniors from that group. But, that just tells you the last 5 recruiting classes have 57 4- and 5-star guys. Virginia, when they played them, had 3. 2 of whom didn't play in the game because they're true freshmen who were being redshirted. So, had one guy who's one 4-star guy playing in the game for Virginia, 57 for the other side. So that number tells you that there's still expectations. Willie Taggart, I think Willie Taggart is week to week in terms of whether or not he's on the hot seat or whether or not he needs to call a moving company. Whereas NC State, they lose this game, yeah, from a season standpoint, yeah, they're behind the 8 ball, but I think I don't know that they came in thinking they'd win 9 or 10 games or threaten to do that like they had the last couple of years. Florida State needs to. I don't think they're going to, but they need to. So yeah, from a game pressure standpoint going in, the game pressure is definitely much more on Florida State's side.
If you're looking for just a second at Clemson, North Carolina, we're going to figure the house will be full at North Carolina. Is there anything in your mind North Carolina can do to stay on the field with Clemson? Let's not say for the whole game. Could they stay on the field with them for half?
Barring the unforeseen. Last year Trevor Lawrence goes down to injury in the Syracuse game. Not so you can't account for that, obviously. Assuming everyone's at relative full strength, I just don't see it. No, and not just because they lost to App State. If they had rallied to beat App State last week and they're 3-1 going into this game, I don't see that either. No, I don't think there's anybody in the ACC. And Virginia, I think, could legitimately be a 10, 11, or even 12-win team. I keep laughing when I say that. Going into that game, which I anticipate will be played in Charlotte with Virginia being a part of it. But as confident as I am that Virginia will beat Notre Dame this weekend, and I love my Virginia team, when I was asked to vote at the ACC kickoff who would be the ACC champion, I had Clemson winning the Atlantic, I had Virginia winning the Coastal. I have Clemson winning that division. I think Virginia is the only team in the ACC this year that can give them a game. I don't think they win the game. I think they can give them a game. I don't think Carolina has anything. Even with a rabid crowd, Carolina blue, pom-poms waving, 57,000 doing that, I don't see there's any chance, any way, shape, or form that this game is anything resembling a contest at halftime. No.
Here's the one thing that I've always wanted to think, and this is my entire lifetime, especially since they went to divisions. I'm sitting here, Chris, in my mind going, the Duke UVA game is coming up here in a few weeks. How awesome would it be if just one time with a straight face, you and I could have a conversation and say, this is for the division championship. This is for the division championship. So that's my dream. Now, my dream can end this week if we go to Virginia Tech. But I'm sitting there, you can't seriously be saying that Miami, Virginia is for the ACC Coastal. You can't. It's just, there's not, I tried to watch some of their game. I think it was Central Michigan. Yeah. Back and forth. And I'm sitting here, and I don't know if they're going to get better and squeak out a blow bit or not. But I can't see that game is going to be the game for our division. No. I don't think that North. Yeah, I know it looked that way earlier. It looked that way earlier, but it definitely doesn't look that way now. So that's just my little dream that we could have the week of the Duke Virginia game, we're talking about it being for the Coastal Division. So.
Wow. So what you're trying to tell me is I've got to actually start to learn to hate Duke football too, because I love those basketball games the last few years where the anticipation of Duke Virginia basketball week is such that you just can't wait for that. But during football season, I'm generally pretty genteel towards your Blue Devils. So yeah, if that ends up being the case, it might be kind of a rabid week there. Hey, that's a few weeks off, but hey, that could be fun. It's a fun basketball rivalry. It's a fun lacrosse rivalry. The lacrosse rivalry might actually be even more intense than the basketball rivalry for those who are at least cognizant in lacrosse. And so, yeah, it'd be kind of fun to see the football and get to that level.
Well, it's interesting because, and I can say this with a straight face, when they play in basketball, I'm pulling for Virginia to win that game. That's how much Tony Bennett means to me. That's how much I love the program anyway. I love Tony Bennett. So I'm sitting there, and Rebecca's degree on the wall at the house looks pretty cool with the UVA on it. I pull for Tony Bennett to beat Coach K. I can't say with a straight face I would be pulling for Bronco to beat Cut.
Yeah.
I don't care if they don't win the game. But that's what I'm saying. If we beat Virginia Tech, you're at least we get to have that conversation for a couple of minutes, which would be pretty cool.
It would be, yeah.
Couple things real quick. I'm gonna throw out my senseless fun fact for the week. I did not know this. Now my brother attended Old Dominion. We grew up there. I did not know, Chris, that Old Dominion was once the Norfolk division of William and Mary.
I didn't know that either.
From 1930 to 1940, not only was that their name, but they played football. I was sitting there saying how cool it was that ODU is playing football for the first time ever, and I said it to the wrong person. They came back to me and said, well, actually, ODU played football for 10 years, and they had a record of 42, 36, and 4. So that's the fun fact, and I don't know what you do with that one. But I wanted to ask you about this. Last thing about the conference as a whole. We're 3 or 4 games in, depending on if you've had a bye. Chris, 7 of the 14 teams have already lost 2 games. Are you concerned about the health of the league or not?
I was concerned before the season started. So the results have just confirmed what I thought before it started. I mean, selfishly, as a UVA observer, fan, bleed orange and blue guy, I was glad that so many people were down, because that's when I was when I was doing my accounting before the season. It was based on as much that other teams were down as it was that Virginia was that far up, when I thought that Virginia could be a 10 or even 11 win team going in. No, it's not surprising. I mean, it's odd too, because from a developmental standpoint, you look at the NFL draft, and the ACC is always a close second to the SEC in terms of our players who get drafted, and it's not just all Clemson guys; it's a lot of guys across the league. But I've thought this for a few years before Clemson really emerged as a champion, and even before Florida State did. They had both those teams had that run there for a few years. Now it's Clemson by themselves. But there was a time when we would beat each other up so much because we had a lot of good teams but no great teams. Now we're at a situation where, you start to look at it. I think Louisville with Satterfield he'll get that program turned around quickly, and so I think they're in a good place. Mac Brown will eventually get it turned around. I just wonder about his longevity at his age, but he'll get it turned around and maybe be able to hand the reins off in a few years to maybe a heir apparent, maybe a coach in waiting type situation. So I don't feel bad there. Pat Narduzzi, I'm afraid, is going to always be a 7 or 8 win guy. I don't know that Pitt's going to get beyond that necessarily under his regime. I think Virginia Tech, before they get back, they're going to have to make a coaching change. I really do. I think Florida State, same thing. Dave Dorn is doing a good job at NC State. This is a down year because they lost a lot, so I'm not concerned there. Dave Clawson is clawing out victories. Good for him. At Wake, it's tough to do, but he's doing it. I liked where Dino Babers had Syracuse before this season. I'm concerned about them now. But this could be an issue, too. They had to replace a quarterback. They had to replace some guys. They won 10 games last year. Expectations may be outsized compared to the talent they have. So we'll see what he does next year. I think you kind of already write this year off for Syracuse. Steve Adazio, I think he's kind of reached his height, his ceiling. 7 or 8 wins is probably his height or ceiling at Boston College. Let's see. How about the Georgia Tech situation? New Jeff Collins, new situation, 3-year rebuild at least before he can be competitive with having to change from the option to a conventional pro style offense. Miami, Manny Diaz. If nothing else, the early returns on Manny Diaz it wasn't Mark Richt's fault. Manny Diaz hasn't figured out how to play offense either. It wasn't all Mark Richt. Clemson's Clemson. I think I've talked about everybody. I'm sure I may have forgotten somebody. And Cutcliffe's going to always win games with less talent. So there you go. There's my 3-minute rundown of the ACC. Yeah, I'm concerned, but I don't know what you do to fix it. I think you have a couple teams on the rise, a couple teams kind of holding pattern, and at least a couple who need to make coaching changes.
Spot on. I knew that question was in good hands, and I appreciate you running down so quickly. Real quick, Christy, talk about the ACC trailing the SEC. We have a stat this week that we rule in the NFL. You got the teams in the NFL, Chris. This weekend, 9 of them had an ACC quarterback starting a game. Did that number surprise you?
When I heard it before, even Daniel Jones got the starting job in New York when it was 8, and I had to do some quick thinking, like, yeah, God, really? We have that many? But no, it doesn't. Like I said earlier, the ACC produces talent. We have good players all over the place. We have linemen and backers and secondary and receivers and running backs and quarterbacks. I mean, we've got them in this league. The SEC gets a lot of hype. I was listening to, when I was driving down to VMI on Saturday to do my game, listening to at one of the ESPNU college football preview shows, and I hear about SEC, and I started thinking about this. If I was doing this show, here's what I'd say. Tell me, outside of Alabama and Georgia are great, and right now, so they are where the ACC was 5 years ago when Clemson and Florida State were both great. There was a year we had 2 in the playoff. I will get excited about LSU when they win a game in October or November against either a Georgia or an Alabama. Until then, they're number 4 in name only, as far as I'm concerned. Outside of LSU, who else in the SEC scares you? No one. So there's a lot of hype there. Georgia's only relatively recently great since they hired Kirby Smart. And so, it's been an Alabama league with now Georgia trying to emerge. LSU, maybe. I'm still say jury very much still out there. You look at the Big Ten. Ohio State's always good. Who else is good in the Big Ten? Who else scares you in the Big Ten? Nobody scares you in the Big Ten. Big 12, who scares you? Oklahoma's good, can't win a playoff game. Texas is decent. Jury's still out there. Nobody scares you outside of Oklahoma, and Oklahoma doesn't scare you that much. They can't play defense. Pac-12, no great team. Lots of good teams, no great teams. They all beat each other up. So this narrative of the ACC is so far down. Everybody's down except for Alabama, Georgia, and Clemson, and not in that order. After those 3, everybody else is interchangeable as far as I'm concerned. And so, I don't think the ACC is disadvantageous vis-a-vis anyone else as far as conferences go this year.
It's going to be interesting because, you're correct. The Big 12, it's fun TV, but if you're into offense, the only team that maybe showed something is Wisconsin, but I think the rest of the leagues are very similar to the ACC. We talked about Daniel Jones. And I could talk about Daniel Jones for an hour and a half, but to try to sum it up, I'm just going to say this. That was a whole lot of fun for me yesterday. And I even told my wife when they scored the touchdown, I said, I don't care if Tampa Bay goes down the field and kicks the field goal. I go, it's still a great story. And now, were you actually watching the end of the game?
I had the end of the game once on the red zone. Yeah, I did a VMI soccer game, so I got back around 3:30, 3:45 or so. But it was a highlighted game on red zone. I wanted to say this. I didn't get to watch much of the game. I saw the last drive, saw the numbers, and I'm just reminded of. Okay, so I during the day, my work day at Augusta Free Press, the home office, the palatial home office of Augusta Free Press. I have Crystal and I work in a big office in our house, and we have a TV on, and we have sports talk on during the day. Like, so basically, we're watching sports talk radio. And one of the shows we watch regularly is actually it's a for the UVA listeners who are still tuned into us here. I have the Tiki Barber show on Tiki and Tierney is what it is on CBS Sports Radio, 3:00 Eastern. In part, I mean, it's a good show, and also it's Tiki. He talks a lot of UVA, so it's great to have a national guy talking UVA a lot. And I remember now, so I say all that to say, when Daniel Jones got drafted, to the Tierney guy, I think his name is Jake Tierney. The Tierney guy is a huge New York homer. I mean, Yankees this, Knicks that, Nets and Rangers and Giants and Jets. Big homer for New York, which is fine, but when the Giants drafted Jones 6th, he just tirade after tirade about this, about he's obviously a huge Giants fan, and just how atrocious this was, and how what a poor decision this was, and you could tell that he was making sure the producers booked guests that would help advance that narrative. And I remember a conversation that was on this show, Tierney and Donovan McNabb. Now, Donovan McNabb, good pro quarterback. Didn't win any big games, but he's a good pro quarterback. He himself, when he was drafted by Philadelphia, was greeted by the fans of Philadelphia with a cascade of boos because they wanted Ricky Williams. I won't ever forget that. So here's a guy who came into the league himself, semi-controversial for no good reason, no fair reason to him. And he lit into the Giants and lit into Daniel Jones. What's his claim to fame? His coach coached the Mannings? So what? His coach coached the Mannings. This kid's not. I don't care who coached him. We're talking about the player. And so, panning him personally. I mean, just like casting aspersions on the fact that Daniel Jones even aspired to be an NFL quarterback. Oh wow, he wasn't even recruited out of high school. I mean, all this stuff, which we look at and say, he played himself out of not being recruited in high school to being the 6th pick in the draft. What a great story. This was looked at by these experts as not being a great story. Did you see what happened, Donovan? Did you see how the kid played the other day? Did you see what he did on 4th down? This unathletic kid scrambled, and he didn't scramble. He took off. He Bryce Perkins his way in the end zone on that 4th down play. So, I'm rooting like hell for this kid because I hated that whole spring and summer of discontent in New York. And to see him succeed and win the game, thumb in the nose to all you people in New York who didn't think you got the right guy. You got the right guy.
It's interesting because I was sitting there and again, my love for Duke and UVA goes way past these kids while they're in school. I followed them all the way through. As a team, I'm not a Giants fan. With Daniel Jones being their quarterback, I'm a Giants fan. I'm pulling for Daniel Jones, and I was sitting there and I was afraid, Chris, if he had a bad game, that everybody who felt they could run their mouth when he got drafted would have had center stage on Monday. And I just didn't want him to have to deal with that. That's why I said if Tampa Bay had made the field goal, it wouldn't have made it any less better for me because Daniel Jones doesn't play defense. If that had been Eli Manning, I mean, Tampa Bay, I got to watch that game start to finish. Tampa Bay scored the first 6 times they touched the ball.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you said it really well last week. The Giants are rebuilding. They have holes. Now, they made some defensive stops when they had to have them. But for me, I'm not going to run around and say, oh, look, he's the second coming. I'm saying, thankfully, there's not 5,000 people at the top of their lungs saying, we told you this kid sucked. That's the joy for me.
Well, and what I saw was too. So I didn't get to watch the game live, but I've watched there was a breakdown of his game that I saw, a segment on ESPN, and so breaking down his passes, like his throws. I mean, we're not talking about he threw some jump balls that his guys caught. We're talking about he made good reads. He threw the ball well. He got a strong arm. He displayed that very well. He's clearly the better quarterback. I mean, this isn't a decision about we want to see what we got. What we saw on Sunday was he's the better quarterback between him and Eli Manning. He's got a better arm, and now he's going to have some games now because now, and even now it's still a little early. Nobody has tape on this kid. They saw him in preseason. They know what throws he can make, but now you'll start to get a sense. It's kind of like in baseball. I end up always bringing things back to baseball. The hitter, a hitter who starts off, a rookie hitter who starts off hot the first time through the league, hits 350, 10 home runs the first month or so. All right, now the league's got a book on you. And now you might be good at hitting the fastball, but are you gonna be able to lay off the slider? What do you do with a changeup in the dirt? Are you disciplined enough to lay off that? Do you know the strike zone well? I mean, so with Daniel Jones, Tampa Bay kind of went in blind with a game plan, and it worked in the first half. Second half, it didn't work so well, and now you can see that the athleticism that Jay Billis talked about. Jay Billis was his AAU coach. This kid isn't a 6'5". He's not an Eli Manning type standing back in the pocket with a 6'4", 6'5" guy who can only stand there. He can run. He's got mobility. He's got an arm. He brings different dimensions to that offense that you haven't seen with the Giants for a while. And so now defensive coordinators have to think a little bit about what they're going to do, but they'll throw some things at him, and we'll see how he responds. So I mean, he'll have some rough games. Every quarterback has rough games, but the first impression we have of Daniel Jones is not the one, like you said. I mean, he could have had a rough first outing, and that would have determined his how people look at him. Now we're going to load the box. Now we're going to make it really hard on this kid, and maybe he doesn't emerge from that. Nah, he's good. Now we'll see how the league responds. We'll see how he responds. Also, unfortunately for him, he doesn't have Saquon Barkley. That's the biggest drawback right now. 4 to 8 weeks out with that high ankle sprain.
It's interesting because they were talking to the Tampa Bay coach, who I did not know had such strong ties to Virginia Tech.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah, they were talking to him after the game, and they said our game plan was very simple. We were going to stop Barkley and make the kid beat us. And Barkley ran the ball. He ran the ball for 10 yards. It was like 8 carries for 10 yards. The Tampa Bay game plan worked to perfection even before Barkley got hurt. But it's a situation to where it was a fun watch for me, and there were some plays. Lynn was watching it with me. We normally don't watch the NFL. She tolerates me watching. I watch college football on Saturday for 12 hours, start to finish. Just have fun with it. Don't watch a lot of NFL, but Daniel Jones' first start, you got to watch this. And he made some plays that Eli just couldn't have made. The scrambles, the 2 touchdown runs. He made some throws, but it was something where it was fun for a week, and I'm glad for his sake that all of those people who said the guy's a bum, I hope they don't all get to now say, okay, we were just kidding, we really liked him. Mm-hmm. Hey, I've got a couple of loose notes, and then I want to end one with you. I got a question for you at the end to turn it over to you. A couple quick personal notes. We talked last Friday. I was on my way to Friday Harbor to see a high school football game. And Chris, I know when people we talk, people hear you say I'm on the other side of the world. I wanted to explain to you what happened. It was Coopville that came to Friday Harbor. And the high school kids at Coopville go to school at 7:30 in the morning. And Friday Harbor is the island furthest removed from the mainland. So these young men and the cheerleaders, so the young men and women, go to school, get on a bus, ride for an hour, get on a boat, ride for 2 hours, play a football game, and then do it in reverse. And we're sitting there, and when you go to a game at Friday Harbor and you get on the last boat, you're getting on the boat with the team, with the coaches, with the cheerleaders, with the booster moms, the fans. And I'm sitting there, and I was actually talking to the woman responsible for the cheerleaders. And I said, ma'am, I'm just curious. What time will you guys get home tonight? And she said 1:30. I'm sitting there in my mind going, wow, you get up at 6:30 to go to school. You start school at 7:30. You're getting home on a Friday night at 1:30. And they were just kudos to somebody for being able to do that. I know that I've had many 18-hour days in my lifetime, but to do that and to try to play a sport as physical as football, I just thought that was just to put it in perspective as to when you say I'm on the other end of the world. I guess I'm on the other end of the world plus 30 miles because it's it makes for an interesting day. But I got to talk to anytime we go over there, I get to talk to the coaches on the way back, and the kids from Coopville were so well behaved. Sadly, not sadly for Friday Harbor, but Friday Harbor took them down 53-7. I just wanted to try to put that in perspective. I'm thinking that's an awful lot for a high school student to deal with on a Friday. Last one for me, and then I got one I've been waiting to ask you. Sunday, again, watching two things. At the same time, Daniel Jones is doing his stuff. Chelsea Plum and the Las Vegas Aces actually forced a Game 4. They kept the series with the Mystics alive, and they're going to get together again on Tuesday. And Connecticut Sun actually came to L.A. and finished their series out. Jasmine Thomas, another young lady from Duke, had 29 points. So Connecticut, the Connecticut Sun are in the finals. They're waiting for the winner of Las Vegas and Washington. They'll play again on Tuesday night. But Chris, the last one I wanted to get back to you, and I don't want to talk about necessarily the things that have led up to this. But as a question to you, as a fan, if you were a fan of a football team, an NFL team, would you want your team to sign Antonio Brown right now?
No, and I wouldn't have wanted him before the piling on of the sexual assault allegations. It's a civil case, and then the second one that came out that wasn't even a legal proceeding. Just it was mentioned in that civil case, and then the bombshell with him apparently threatening the second woman in group messages. Even before all that, I wouldn't have wanted him. Like just the Antonio Brown that was so disruptive in training camp with the Raiders. I mean, the whole helmet nonsense and not showing up for practice and apparently, I mean, using racial epithets aimed at Mike Mayock, the general manager, a black man calling white man racial names on his way out the door. I mean, I wouldn't have wanted that guy even then. Now you heap all this other stuff on top of it, and then on top of all that, on Sunday, he can't keep his fingers, from doing the talking for him, and he offends the rest of the league. He says he's never going to play in the NFL again. He drags Robert Kraft into it. I mean, Kraft is not a saint, but he's also the guy that would be responsible for writing that check that you say you're supposed to get there, Antonio. And he's not going to write it now, and he's going to fight it. He's got more lawyers than you've got, and he's going to fight this as long as he has to and drain everything he can to make sure that doesn't happen. I mean, I just can't imagine. Now, I'm not surprised that the Patriots of all teams would have tried to deal with him. They have a history. When Randy Moss had some interpersonal issues. He left Minnesota, had a couple-year run in Oakland. Had a reputation for being sort of a bad seed. The Patriots way was able to encapsulate him and actually got great production, and also he was a model citizen there from all accounts in his time with New England, his few years in New England. And there have been other guys that have come through in a similar way that actually benefit from being a part of that organization, maybe benefit as people in addition to being football players. So I'm not surprised they were the team to strike out and try to be the ones to hey, we can get him and we can do something with him. The fact that they couldn't, he lasted a week, and then he went out the way he did. I don't think there'll be another team that will ever call his name. I can't see it possible, because if Bill Belichick can't get him to be a team player, how can anybody else? So no, there's just no. And plus, now you ask me as a fan. I was thinking as a general manager or coach or player personnel director there. As a fan, no. If my team took him, I would stop rooting for my team until he was gone. I do know a Patriots fan, and when the signing was announced, I cautioned this fan, who's a friend of mine, don't rush out to buy your Antonio Brown jersey. I don't think it'll have long shelf life. So no, as a fan, there's just absolutely no way I would root for a team that would have him as a player.
You know, it's funny that you would word it that way, because that was my exact take when this all came to light. You're in a situation to where, because now they're talking about when he signed with the Patriots, the teams that he that were in line, if you will. Seahawks name came up, the Browns name came up, and you're sitting there and you're going, wow, if anybody is willing to sign him now, I don't know what to do with that. I don't know what to think. And first, the thing that he did that was the most disturbing to me was one of the things that he supposedly tweeted out was every player in recent history who he felt had done something worse than him and were still getting to play. I don't know if you saw that one or not, but yeah, I'm just sitting there going, in my mind, I don't follow the NFL as much as I do college, and one of the reasons is I've lived in the home market of 18 teams. Somebody said, "Who's your team?" I've lived in and been a rooting fan of 18 of the 32 teams. I follow the league; it's entertaining, but I have to admit, if the Seahawks were the team to sign him at this point, it would be tough to get excited about that. I feel like it's a sad case that I saw, that he's signed up to go back to school, taking some online classes at Central Michigan, and they said that actually happened while he was with the Patriots, and that he's supposedly going back and trying to work on his degree. It's the same way for me though, and I know that Manziel wasn't committing the same offenses. But I just kept thinking, every time that Manziel's name popped up and the next league form popped up, and I'm sitting here going, what is it going to take? What does somebody have to do where we can collectively say, you're not welcome here?
Yeah. That's the tough thing. You think of talents like Manziel, Ryan Leaf. I mean, people who had all the talent in the world, all the opportunity in the world to make something of themselves, and all they had to do to take advantage of those opportunities, it was be decent people. It's so hard to figure. Like for people, regular people like us, for our listeners out there, you're Antonio Brown. I mean, Dan Le Batard, I'm not going to take credit for this. The Dan Le Batard show was having a discussion on this topic today. All Antonio Brown had to do was not send any of those text messages to that young woman. He didn't have to walk on water. He didn't have to cure cancer. He didn't have to open an orphanage. He just had to not be a dick, and he would have gotten a $19 million check, a $9 million check today. If simply last week he could have avoided being a total asshole, he's got a check for $9 million in his bank account right now. That's not hard. And he couldn't even meet that low standard of just don't be a butthead. And so what that tells you, the less he is talked about the rest of this NFL season, the better for NFL fans. Steelers fans already washed their hands of him. Raiders fans already have. Patriots fans now have to. Hopefully at some point we talk about people who actually deserve to be playing football instead of this knucklehead.
I couldn't agree with you more. I was pretty sure we were on the same page on that one, and I just wanted to wait till the very end to let that be kind of the wrap-up conversation because I'm ready to not hear about Antonio Brown anytime soon.
Heck yeah, it was good, and hopefully those are the last words we say about Antonio Brown. Right? That was a good discussion. That was good.
Yep. The rest of the day and all the way through until Friday, we're gonna get together on Friday, and we have a very, for both of us, for you for the one team, for me for both of the teams. Both Duke and UVA have huge opportunities to advance their football programs this weekend, and that'll be my focus for the next 4 days. So for me, it's go Blue Devils, go Hoos, and it's going to be a fun week. It's going to be a fun weekend, and I'm already looking forward to Friday.
Indeed. Well, we are too. Big week for our listeners out there. We have a lot of UVA Notre Dame pregame to get you ready for. And so I'll start cranking that stuff out tonight. Actually, got a good bit to get into all week long. We'll get you ready for UVA Notre Dame and whatever else is going on. There's a lot going on in sports this weekend. So for Jerry Carter, I'm Chris Graham signing off, and we will talk to you again soon.